Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Be There in 5 podcast. I'm Kate Kennedy, your host. Today, I have some really fun guests on. I used to do like pod swaps and stuff earlier on in the podcast, and I go through periods of time where it's just me, where I have more guests. It really kind of just depends on how sick I am of talking to myself. And it's fun to shoot the shit about pop culture with other people that are just as enthusiastic as I am, or appropriately in this context, being apologists for all things pop culture. And I was excited to meet two fellow Taylor Swift and I think Meghan Markle apologists, people I just can't quit. And much to my surprise, a Pookie apologist. You never know what makes people tick. What a delight. And today I have on the sisters from Pop Apologists, Lauren Atkinson and Chandler Bledsoe. I'm off camera recording this from my hotel room, but it'll be on YouTube. So if you just want to get to the part with Lauren and Chandler, just skip my intro, like 15 minutes or so to get to the video. And a Beth, shout out to Tori, introduced me to their show, I believe during the Kate Middleton of it all, early, like last year. And I appreciate them being like good sports and indulging me. I hope I wasn't too annoying, but I knew they used to be Mormon. And obviously on this podcast, we've been talking about our fascination with influencers of the LDS persuasion since 2019. So yeah, I think we start there, talk about Taylor Swift for longer than anticipated, which is what makes for a good show, in my opinion. Meghan Markle, among other things. We touch on Justin and Blake a little bit, but mostly do that in their episode. So they have done like a 7-part series, and they keep up with the Justin and Blake scenario. So if you're new here and you go back and listen to my deep dives, keep in mind all we had at the time was Blake's complaint, Justin's New York Times suit, and then the publicist's suit from like Christmas Eve. We didn't have Justin's direct lawsuit to Blake. I did a part 3 and 4 on Patreon for that when the video footage came out. But then, yeah, when the GeoCities website came out, Angel Fire, I don't know, not the best user interface. Interesting concept though. When that came out and it was just like more inundation of paperwork, and now we have Blake's amended complaint, and I'm at a point now where it's like I love a deep dive more than anybody. But I also realize my limitations. And I'm a podcaster and a writer who has no business spending that much time in Adobe Reader. I mean, shout out to the best in the legal world. You're the real stars. Consuming that much information is as dull as it is overwhelming. And I never really knew how to reconcile that. And there's other podcasters doing a great job. Pop Apologists, Ryan Bailey's a friend of mine who's done a great job going through stuff and keeping up with it. And I want to be that person for you, but I would overtake my feed. And I'm unfortunately just too thorough to have casual conversations about it. To the point where we kind of had a casual conversation about it so I was on Pop Apologist episode that came out yesterday, and I'm listening back and I'm like, I'm not explaining this well. Like I'm like, people are going to hate me. I'm not explaining this well at all, because we were talking about the Jenny Slate HR complaint and we have no information about it. All it said was Jenny Slate allegedly filed an HR complaint against Jamie Heath because she, I guess, had lamented, I don't know if it was Jamie directly or, people at Wayfair, that she wasn't happy with her living situation while they were shooting, but she didn't want to lose her $15,000 security deposit. And all it really said was that Wayfair/Jamie offered to reimburse her, and Jenny Slate ended up filing a complaint because of the way he positioned, I think, lending her the money or that reimbursement having something to do with a broader speech about the sanctity of motherhood. Which is just, it's kind of like, huh? I think what I'm always trying to do is be like, okay, let's try to think through what this could have looked like. Clearly, there was some context that made this off-putting. Let's examine what it could be. I think it's less about these things not being real and more about there being a clashing culturally, religiously, professionally, personality-wise, or whatever, where it seems like over and over and over, there are people interpreting the other's behavior in completely different ways. And when we see a lot of, for the most part, there have been some things that I've been really frustrated with Blake about, where I feel like she, in her complaint, she really misrepresented something, not making it clear that she wasn't the one wearing the strip of fabric in the birth scene and being so exposed, but that's the type of thing an actor might wear that would make her feel. I was like, okay, I didn't like that, because that to me was one of the more harrowing harassment accusations of keeping somebody so unsafe and exposed and on an allegedly open film set. I was like, well, I'm horrified. That's awful. But if, that wasn't the case and that's on camera, I'm like, why would you even risk that? Whatever. Anyway, we were talking in the context of like this Hollywood Reporter article that was speaking to how they chalk up a lot of the misunderstandings and interpretations to Justin's faith. And one of my favorite pastimes is pop cultural stories that overlap with religion. But things I can speak to from experience, so I feel more comfortable being critical. But when it's, a religion that I have no visibility into, understanding or experience, and I try to be more careful. So I hadn't really included that in any of my analytics. But when I was researching it more and then understood that Justin and Jamie and Steve are all part of this faith, most all of their friends are, they kind of live in a, secluded community with mostly people that are a part of this. They kind of keep to themselves. And no wonder a lot of you were like, what, you have to like add in the layer of the religious piece to your analysis. And I kind of was like trying to not speak out of turn because I don't know a ton about it. But then when I researched more, I was like, I get why you guys were telling me to look further into this, because things are starting to really click with how, people being in the core leadership roles, director, producer, lead actor, person funding this whole operation that co-founded, all involved with a particular faith, particularly apparently insular culture with its own like vocabulary and way of working and acting, and how that from the top down shaping the culture in a workplace environment with a way of doing things that might seem odd to other people, but is normal when you're part of like a niche community that does things a certain way, speaks a certain way. It's like all starting to make sense to me, like the oversharing, the needless admission of one's like flaws, sexual mistakes, and like porn addiction. Like I'm just kind of, it is an important layer that I'll probably be researching on my own time because I find it pretty fascinating that we like touch on in their episode. And then I was reading the Hollywood Reporter article and some of the amended complaint about how, like praying to God to ask what to do with this next scene, of doing gratitude circles before each meetings, going around a circle and telling somebody, like saying something you've never told anybody before type stuff. If you've been here a while, my like large format group training, trauma bonding, vulnerability, bait, alarms go off for how, in my experience, in the name of testimony, people will kind of get people to admit their deepest, darkest secrets as a means of kind of getting it off their chest, getting it off their desk. But it kind of turns into a situation where now people have like collateral. But we've talked a lot about how lots of different religions or self-help gurus, even in their conferences, my sorority did this, like bonding through sharing secrets with strangers is just always a red flag to me. And the only place that I've seen that kind of like radical transparency, almost like, oh, I wasn't asking, about stuff like a porn addiction or a past where you weren't always, consent wasn't always at the forefront of your mind. My experience is that there's a way people sometimes will talk in super religious or spiritual circles where there's a culture of really leading with your flaws that implies we're all broken and vulnerable and kind of has us all relate in this, one common way that our religion is providing us resolve for, salvation from. But if you're constantly around the same people and like talking about these things regularly as like a form of testimony or whatever it is, like I just have been in situations where I could see that happening, and it does feel like a lot of oversharing, but to some people it's normal. I actually thought that article was really illuminating in terms of that being a potential cultural clash that really underscores a lot of the misinterpretations. That is what I was kind of basing my curiosity on, if in terms of, is there a way Jamie Heath was speaking about motherhood, that it kind of parallels how oftentimes super religious communities will speak about motherhood. In many ways, it's really great and positive, but there are little subtleties in speech that can be a bit condescending, less respectful, and more like relegating you to a role as a mother. And kind of, I think that my instinct when there's a claim and you don't really understand it, instead of deny it outright, I'm like, okay, well, let's hypothesize based on the clues we have what could have happened here that would support this claim. When I understood more about there being several religious people on set and thinking about my past experiences with how insular vocabulary and like a way of operating that's normal amongst one group, but can be well-intentioned, can come across a little bit creepy or invasive or crossing boundaries. And that just, my hypothesis would be that if we're going to use words like sanctity of motherhood, that it was less of a, hey, you need money, here you go. It's, want you to be able to look out for your kids. It's one thing to pay somebody a favor. It's another thing to take one's personal religious beliefs and project them onto somebody as like kind of a prescriptive expectation for like how women should behave, how mothers should behave, what mothers should be prioritizing. And kind of, you never know if it came across as like she wasn't doing right by her kids by not moving X, Y, or Z. And I kind of wonder if that was more it. Anyways, I was on the plane last night with really spotty Wi-Fi, getting random messages like, God forbid you celebrate the sanctity of motherhood. And I was like, listen, I am a mom. Motherhood is sacred to me. I approach my identity a bit more multitudinal. And unfortunately, there are ways where that part of my identity, I feel like, is inappropriately centered in contexts where it shouldn't be, in contexts where, like Lauren was saying, a father's duty or the sanctity of fatherhood like wouldn't be when you're at work. And there's just a way that this is done that sounds like it's with really good intentions, but oftentimes feels like it's more meant to keep women in their place. And that's what I just want to create a watch out for, not necessarily point fingers and say that's definitely what happened. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, why did I bring that up? Oh, because a lot of you, since you know that I love talking about religious and pop cultural intersections, a lot of you brought up, like, you didn't bring up the faith that they all practice and how that could be part of it. And I actually hadn't really put a ton of thought of it until I read this Hollywood Reporter article that Lauren and Chandler sent me, and then we talked about it like very briefly on their show, but I actually had more thoughts I wanted to elaborate on in case you wanted my take on that part of it. You can claim anything in these documents, and I think what's hard is like keeping a balance of, being critical while also like remaining open to claims until proven otherwise. And again, I just wish that we got a little bit more verbatim or like concrete evidence from Blake and Co., because it just, I think, helps to temper the speculation. But yeah, you have to like really devote your entire content docket to this to be able to do it in a way that's, I think, thorough and fair. And I think I'm too bad at getting out of the weeds to be able to provide that for you. So I'll just, I guess, talk about it in spurts, like I have been, and or Patreon. And when there's a big event, I guess we'll revisit. It's like, I'm sick of hearing about it and talking about it. But then when I actually go in and read specifics, I realize the specifics are kind of different from the way people talk about it high level. And I do feel like that's worth calling out. But the fatigue is so high, and there's other things we want to, talk about. People that deserve the spotlight. Up-and-comers like Taylor Swift. I'm just kidding. We can't help ourselves. Meghan Markle, literally the people that don't need any more press. But anyway, when I do a swap, I always like to welcome anybody new. Thanks for being here. Be There in 5 is oftentimes, like, I fall into the umbrella of pop culture, but pop culture can be like current events and celeb gossip going on now, or the context of like trends and themes and the collective consciousness of a given time. And a lot of my topics are like very zeitgeisty, like millennial girlhood. I like to look into nostalgic pockets of our existence and kind of deep dive those. Like 2 weeks ago, doing an episode called Freakily Economics about like mid-2000s going out top culture, getting ready together, female bonding rituals, the harsh pop cultural backdrop of the mid-2000s that I think contributed to a lot of self-consciousness that made those spaces a really positive place. If you want a pop culture episode, I think like We Listen and We Don't Budge is a good one, going over like 2024 trends, I think. This episode is sick. And Wicked Witch of the Midwest are decently representative episodes of this podcast. Also, Influencer Unsolved Mysteries is one I really like. That's a series I'm trying to start. But, and I keep having influencers who will agree to talk to me for it or come on it, and then they keep bailing, you guys. So I don't think I've given up on that one, because I think it has potential. Oh, duh, how could I forget? I finally saw Wicked after 20 years and only listening to the cast album and realizing there was a lot left out of the album lyrics that one could attribute to a plot or a plot twist, if you will. Mary-Kate Morrissey, Bone Structure of the Gods, Voice of an Angel. I can't believe I got to see her. What a force. She's been doing Alphabet for 15 years, national tour and standby, and has been her full time for a year. And this is the last week of her contract. And like, I just feel so grateful I got to see it. So thank you to the best to convince me to go, because I was kind of like, should I go see something I haven't seen? Because I had never seen Wicked on stage, but I feel like I got the gist, the album. But a lot of you guys were like, no, please just go. You have to do it. It's Mary Kate's last week. And I was like, thank you. You're right. That was worth it. So anyways, my recap about Wicked is up on Patreon if you want to hear my thoughts. But other than that, please enjoy this episode with Lauren and Chandler from Pop Apologists. A be there in 5 lifestyle is one thing, running a little bit behind. But whenever I try to make a dermatologist appointment, it's like be there in 5 months. Why does it take so long to get a dermatologist appointment? Does anyone else have this problem? I swear, ever since I was a teenager and had really serious cystic acne, I've had trouble getting in, finding the right team, getting the right, course of treatment. And when I heard about Apostrophe, I was excited to share it with you because Apostrophe is an online platform that connects you with an expert dermatology team to get customized acne and dermatology treatments for your unique skin and needs. And Apostrophe's mission is really to fight misinformation in skincare with experts, education, and evidence-based products, which I love. And what's unique about Apostrophe is everything is done online. So Apostrophe helps those who can't see a dermatologist in person get professional care for their skin. And each patient receives a personalized treatment containing the best combination of oral and or topical medications for their skin concerns, whether it's facial acne, body acne, hyperpigmentation, rosacea, so on and so forth. All you do is fill out an online consultation about your skin goals and medical history, then snap a few selfies and a dermatology provider will create a customized treatment plan just for you. And Apostrophe offers access to prescription treatments for all types of acne. I mentioned earlier, not just hormonal, not just facial, but even back, chest, butt acne. You can treat breakouts really from head to toe. And I know firsthand, this isn't just something you're like dealing with as a hormonal teenager. As we get older, we have so many different hormonal fluctuations, and this has been a source of frustration for me over the years. I really appreciate companies looking to expand and provide access, especially in a category that can be really challenging to get appointments. And with treatments that, in my experience, can be like pretty straightforward if you can just, get in and have somebody evaluate you. And Apostrophe connects you with dermatology providers who will provide expert care for your skin. And we have a special deal for our audience. Get your first visit for only $5 at apostrophe.com/BeThereIn5 when you use our code BeThereIn5. That's a savings of $15. This code is only available to our listeners. To get started, just go to apostrophe.com/BeThereIn5 and click Get Started. Then use our code BeThereIn5 at sign up and you'll get your first visit for only $5. Thank you, Apostrophe, for sponsoring this episode. When it comes to grocery shopping, I've got this problem where, I was going to say I'm a busy working mom, which is true, but I also kind of don't really like it. And it's just not, meal planning and grocery shopping isn't my strength, and that's okay too. And Hungryroot is like having your own personal shopper. They take care of weekly grocery shopping, recommending healthy groceries tailored to your taste, nutrition preferences, and health goals. It's just like the easiest way to not only like eat healthy, but for me, waste less food, spend less time grocery shopping, and to have like simple groceries and recipe ideas that are both going to work for my husband and I, but also our kid. It's so much easier to not be making separate meals for everybody. And whether you want to make sure you're getting a box that takes into account allergy restrictions or any dietary or health goals, from anti-inflammatory to gut-friendly, gluten-free, dairy-free, high protein, etc. They just make grocery shopping simple and stress-free. The big difference with Hungryroot relative to other food, meal, or grocery delivery services is that it delivers you full-size groceries and not just ingredients, and gives you recipes that you can use your groceries for, but you don't have to use them in that recipe. You can just eat them as they are. Does that make sense? I actually usually do their recipes because they're typically like 3-4 ingredients, really straightforward, kid and adult friendly, and you can feel good about what's in them. No high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, or preservatives. They have really good stuff that I don't see at stores. And I am obsessed with their snacks, and we're obsessed with this one particular sous vide chicken. One time they sent me these like Swedish fish that didn't have like all the terrible normal candy ingredients, but they still tasted delightful. Anyway, huge fan, and you're going to love Hungryroot as much as I do. Take advantage of this exclusive offer for a limited time. Get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/BeThereIn5 and use code BeThereIn5. That's hungryroot.com/BeThereIn5, code BeThereIn5. to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. Hungryroot.com/BeThereIn5, code BeThereIn5. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Be There in 5 podcast. I'm Kate Kennedy, your host. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by the Pop Apologists. I, too, am an apologist for so many things in pop culture and women's interests and the like, and I love their mission, and this made me laugh. A podcast by two sisters who care about celebrities as much as their family. Please welcome Lauren Atkinson and Chandler Bledsoe.
Thank you so much for having us.
Your whole life, were you like so into celebrities and magazines and girly stuff and felt like kind of you had to apologize for it?
That's a good question. I feel like we felt like we had to start apologizing for it when we went to a really conservative religious university. And all of a sudden, our passion for Kanye West and Kim Kardashian of the 2016 era, not passionate about the Kanye West of 2025. But anyway, like our obsession with Kimye struck people as uncouth.
Yeah. And I think too, like... with reality TV, I think people, it was like, you watch that trash.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
like, no, it's allegories. It's talking about themes, you know, of humanity.
That's so interesting. So for not to jump right into this, but Be There in 5 podcast listeners, I call them the Beths. We all have a very inexplicable fascination with Utah, with Mormon culture, with like, you know, Mormon reality TV and the like. And you guys went to BYU, just to tag on to. But you grew up in Southern California.
Yes.
So do you feel like, so you were allowed to watch a lot of that stuff growing up, but when you went to college, did you find people were more sheltered?
Oh, I would actually say that we weren't super allowed to watch a lot of things growing up. We were like, I had to still ask my parents if I could watch a PG-13 movie until I moved out.
Until a couple months ago.
Oh, until a couple, I still asked them. I still wouldn't buy them.
Guidelines.
Yes. But I think that when we moved to Utah and we were really steeped in that conservative culture, then I think we did have to, make more apologies for it, or at least explain why it was like worth our time.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting. And I feel like, how have you guys felt having that background that like the past 5 years, there's been kind of a real pop and interest in Salt Lake City in general, but Mormon culture as like a fixture of entertainment?
I feel like, you know, it's almost been kind of validating.
Yeah.
Because I find the culture to be super interesting. I try to not have Mormonism live in my head that much because it's something that was a big part of our childhood and sometimes would be like kind of unpleasant part of my childhood. And so I try not to think about it, but the culture around it is like pretty fascinating. And the Utah culture itself it's just filled with so many idiosyncratic people and idiosyncrasies. And so it's fun to have it like reflected back and have a bunch of people kind of be captivated by it.
Yeah.
A little shocking.
I quite enjoy it because I also find it to be very interesting. And I think like for me, Mormonism, even though I, stopped believing and stopped, being a part of it when I was 17, like it's like always a part of me. My fiance was raised Mormon, but no longer is. Like all of my friends are basically post-Mormon. And so it's just like, it is still actually for me at least very much so part of my life in some way, the culture and just like the lasting effects of that, very strong religion.
Oh, totally. And I gather too that the culture in Utah and Salt Lake and Provo is different than being Mormon in other places.
Yeah, it's such an interesting culture because in other places, if you don't believe in it, you tend to just leave because there's so many other people of other faiths or who don't have a faith. And so it becomes not part of your life pretty quickly. But in Utah, because almost everyone is Mormon, a lot of people call themselves Mormon, but don't actually believe in it or might go to church sometimes because leaving can become such a problem. Like so many more people that live in Utah have in-laws who are Mormon or have a boss who is Mormon, or it's just such a part of the culture. So there's like actually way more Jack Mormons in Utah.
Wow, love it.
Because it's just harder to fully just exit.
Yeah, I think there's so many people who really find the shades of gray that they exist in there, as we see with the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives,
Yes,
which
exactly.
like something like that would have never existed in Southern California because it was just like, you're either in it or you're not.
And I actually will call like Southern California Mormons way more zealous than Utah Mormons. And because they're so fully committed. Some of them.
Like we couldn't drink Coke growing up. But so many of my friends who were raised in Utah, I was like, oh yeah, we drink soda, we drink caffeine.
We'll go out to dinner on Sunday.
Yes, but like, I think our parents, if I could, I think they had to like really plant their flag as we are Mormon in this town, in this place that is not. So we need to really be like strict about the rules.
Because your environment didn't make it easy to follow. Yeah.
Totally.
That's really interesting. I think that Secret Lives of Mormon Wives is fascinating to me because it is so, I feel like, taboo and antithetical to how the church would want to be represented, I assume.
You think?
And like they won't say anything when like a major crime it happens, but they said something when that show was coming out.
Yes.
The church sent out a formal statement. And I've always been, I think I didn't even Jack Mormon is kind of like a cafeteria Catholic, right? Like you take some, you leave some.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like Lisa Barlow.
Okay, that's what I was going to bring up. Lisa Barlow. Lisa Barlow lives rent free in my head. I maybe am a Lisa Barlow apologist in the way you are for the Pookinator. I feel like she would bully me through the screen. I feel like she wouldn't like me in person. I'm terrified of her, but I also can't quit her. And I feel like she is such a self-righteous person who like doesn't embody any of the principles whatsoever of the church.
Oh, definitely not. I actually don't understand what about her is Mormon whatsoever.
No.
Honestly, except for, and this might be controversial to say, but except for like the love of success. Because I do think within Mormonism, there is like a virtue capitalism. There's a kind of like idea that and I think it's unspoken, but I think it's true that people who are really successful monetarily, they kind of have like an increased value within the community. Like I never saw personally, I won't say you'll never see, but I never saw personally someone who didn't have like a high social standing with a really high like net worth as like a stake president or as like an ecclesiastical leader.
Yeah, like high level members of the clergy, because members of the Mormon clergy are not paid. And so in order to really hold those positions, you have to, be financially comfortable enough to like devote a lot of your time to your religion or be in a position at your job where it's okay for, you to like do both.
Yeah, so she loves successful people, and they love that in the Mormon church.
Lisa Barlow for me stirs up some complicated emotions because I think I grew up having to follow a lot of the really strict rules. And I think I almost take more of like a Heather Gay, like earlier seasons Heather Gay approach, where it was like, wait, I had to follow all of these rules because it was so important that I, didn't drink Diet Coke or Coca-Cola, and I covered my shoulders and, wore a one piece. And like, to me, that was Mormonism. Those rules were extremely important. And that was a part of my like devotion to God. So when I think I see people who have a much more lackadaisical approach to like the rules, it makes me feel like, well, what was the point of it all? Why did I have to, go through so much if people could be so casual about it?
Yeah, and it's a very personal and sometimes traumatizing process to exit a religion because of what that means at the expense of your family, your community, everything you know. And it's like to endure a somewhat painful separation from something that positions itself as you're all in or you're all out, and to see people bend the rules. Like, yeah, that's really frustrating.
Yes.
Thank
you for validating.
I 100% agree. I could talk. I don't want to make this a too Barlow forward episode because I know she's on the outs with people. I promise I'll get off this topic shortly. But one of my initial things early on in the podcast was like, is there something about the faith that like makes people want to blog? And my where I net out was like, yes, more like there is a doctrinal, at least on the website, like encouragement to like journal and log your thoughts and so on and so forth. But it also, if there's an encouragement of women to stay within the confines of the home, it's kind of like starting a business and doing and finding work and exercising your talents within the confines of what the faith wants you to do without formally working in another career.
Well, yeah, and you're promoting yourself as doing, you're promoting this image of yourself as like the ideal mother. And so if that is what your faith promotes and wants, then you're kind of like propping yourself up. So it's very self-serving as well. I think that also in Mormonism, there's a very explicit importance placed on perfection, on seeking perfection. And that's a very like 2014 blogger aesthetic vibe. Mormons are supposed to like seek toward perfection. They're always supposed to be evolving toward perfection, striving toward it. And it's actually very different than Christianity, which is like, I know I'm flawed, I'm accepted in spite of my flaws. But in Mormonism, it's I obey the rules and I follow the rules and I am saved by my own acts and not grace. So it's actually very disparate religions. Although Mormons will say that it's the same thing, like it's Christianity, just another book. But it's really actually quite different.
Well, and there are privileges that are only granted to people who are in line with the faith and following the rules. Like you cannot go to the temple if you are not paying tithing to the church. And if you are, breaking the word of wisdom, which is kind of the code of like, no drinking, no drugs, no coffee, whatever. Like the privileges, which are the highest privileges within the religion, to go to the temple and, do the work there. And it's like, rituals and whatnot. You cannot do those things if you are not following the rules.
Right. That's what. So this morning when I was researching Justin Baldoni's faith if you didn't listen to my combo with Lauren and Chandler on Pop Apologists because we go into Justin and Blake's latest and greatest. I was researching Justin's faith, Baha'i, and the first thing I do when I want to sniff out a religion is look up the tithing sitch, because depending on how high control it is, it really reads like extortion. And I had an ex-Mormon on my Patreon once whose mom was withheld from her wedding for not tithing. Like, what house of God is withholding your mother from your wedding for financial reasons? Anyways, I raged about that quite a bit. But
That's very common.
Well, yeah, and in Mormonism,
yeah, you guys didn't flinch. I was like,
my grandmother couldn't go inside the temple when like my mom and dad were married.
A Mormon won't hear that and think that that's bad. They'll hear that and just think that's the reality. I mean, well, they're not worthy to go inside.
I couldn't see like. The temple is like reserved for once you're a certain age and things. And so like I didn't see my older sister get married in the temple. Like I was outside.
Right.
So there's just like, that's by design that it is only for like people who are like in that category.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting. And like what I think is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's tithing within the LDS church is 10% of your income. And the Baha'i faith was one-time payment of 19% of your net worth.
Oh, that's an interesting structure.
Oh, yeah. What? I'm like trying to like run those numbers and I don't know what that.
I was like deep in Baha'i Reddit threads, and they were like, "What's different about it is like in Mormonism, you know, it's everything you make, not before expenses. But Baha'i, it's kind of like doing your taxes, where your people are like deducting as much as they can before they give their 19%." And I was just like, "This is wild," but. When I was reading about this, did you have to like, when you were kids, give like your allowance and stuff?
I remember like having, allowance.
It's like you're supposed to.
You're supposed to. Yeah. I remember getting birthday money and I had to give, birthday money for sure. Any money I actually got, babysitting money, any money I earned as a child, I had to pay tithe.
You're supposed to pay tithe.
You're supposed crazy?
Crazy.
That's so interesting to me.
And well, the way crazier part of it is, in Mormonism, there's a doctrine that if you have paid your tithing, you can still have like kind of basically broken almost every rule. But during the last days when the earth is burned and like basically in Mormonism during the second coming of Jesus Christ, when like Jesus reappears, this is according to like how I remember it. It was taught to me as a kid, like everyone will like burn alive except the righteous will raise above the fire. And if you've paid your tithing, they would call it like fire insurance, because like at least for sure like won't burn alive with everyone else.
It was like as a joke.
Yeah, like that. It was colloquially called a fire insurance, but that was very much like taught to us as like 7-year-olds and like 12-year-olds. And
my fire insurance for my
you're like learning stop, drop, and roll. Like you don't have the ability to discern. Terrible.
I don't know if you meant I think you mentioned the percentage, but like 10% is not nothing.
Well, and also
Mormon churches are Kris Jenner.
Yes,
like they're living off of a lot of people's fortune,
and there are a lot of very successful people.
And if you actually look in the doctrine, it should be 10% of your net income after your expenses, but they've totally revised it. And the guy who was trying to like really explain this to people and had like a whole blog on it was excommunicated. So anyway,
I could talk about it.
No,
I think it's real. I mean, it's interesting when you're a tax exempt organization and you have a diverse fund of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, you own malls. There's so many interesting things about the financial element there. And I was going to maybe touch on Justin and Blake, but I feel like we did a thorough job on your show. So if you want that, go to Pop Apologists. But I did 2 deep dives with her initial complaint and his, to kind of like set the scene before we had a lot of more context. But like, I'm not a paralegal. I can't spend my time. It's so much paperwork. It's inundation of information that I don't always think serves them. Like I know Brian Friedman is known for being aggressive and being very forward and putting all this stuff out there. But like, I almost think the website, I don't know if it was made in like GeoCities or what, but like, can you give me some headlines? Can you, I don't want to just have to sift through all this legal paperwork.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot of research.
It's a lot,
which is why I think people are like craving it being broken down for them, because it's hard to digest yourself. I mean, this is a tome of information.
Yeah.
At times I've even felt like I was being sued by one or both of them because I was just having to sift through so much discovery, like just like literally so many screenshots, and I'm reading the paragraphs, like it is all in the legal jargon, and it is hard to read that over and over again.
I don't like when I realize I've got like whatever. Like I won't pick, since I don't have a legal eye, I won't realize when I'm being manipulated by the legal document.
Yes.
That seems cut and dry. And I'm like, well, this is truth. And it's like, no, you can say anything you want in a complaint. And one example is how like sneakily in Blake's complaint, they wrote like him saying that the sex scene between younger Atlas and younger Lily, like Justin was like, that's hot or something. She was like, that's really inappropriate in a situation involving, an intimacy scene with minors. The characters were minors, not the actors,
Right.
which I do think matters.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not that it's not creepy, but I do feel like there's distinctions like that kind of matter, that are very sneaky. Or like her saying, normally, this is what I don't understand. Normally you would be wearing a strip of fabric over, your private parts during that sort of scene. I didn't catch that. I thought she was wearing that.
No, that it was that I was just going to bring that up. It was a very cut and dry example of her lying, according to Brian Friedman, because she made it seem like she just had a strip of fabric over her genitalia. And what they said is, no, she actually had also black briefs on. She had a maternity suit on her, covering her abdomen. She was basically fully covered, according to them. But if you read her complaint, it just sounds like she has a thin strip of fabric
like
over
what is
her.
traditional in those types of settings.
Yes.
For an actor.
And she was just so vulnerable. And it's like, well, okay, who is lying?
And there were cameras and boom mics. It's like all of this is
right
on the record.
Right.
I think that's what confuses me, is like for somebody to patently lie seems incredibly difficult given the circumstances and the paper trail of a lot of it. And I also think what I'm often forgetting with that case too is that in Blake's lawsuit, like what we're ultimately going to be litigating against is like, was this retaliation or not? Like her part isn't going to go into was this harassment or not. It's going to be, was this retaliation or not? And the defamation suit's what's going to go into, was this harassment or not? And therefore, was it valid that she called it as such? You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think that there's so much to it that I even forget like what it's actually about. And I was reading a really interesting article this morning about how like more so than any takeaway anybody will have from this case, it probably won't make a meaningful impact in workplace circumstances with actors and intimate scenes. It probably won't make a meaningful impact with creative takeover and the point Justin's trying to make, blah, blah, blah. The industry will profoundly change as publicists. And like, it almost read to me as like, people think this is Enron to CPAs. Like, this is a watershed case that will fundamentally change practitioners of publicity and how they have to, A, never have a paper trail, and B, a lot of the secret sauce is in who you know, the positioning, calling people, saying yes or no. And now that being used against you, it makes their job high risk in a way that a lot of, especially, solo or boutique publicists, like, they can't get big clients because big clients aren't going to sign those indemnification terms. That means they'd have to pay back, any damage done. And I don't know. It was interesting reading about how publicists aren't going to be able to do what they do anymore because they're going to be so scared of it all coming out and people essentially using lawsuits as press releases.
Really? So it's like killing an industry potentially.
It's killing the ability to defend your clients by sneaky means, which is what is all. So it's like maybe not a bad. It's maybe not a bad thing because like I kind of think in blind item culture, like people overstate the role of PR.
Yeah.
For most people, it's just genuine self-promotion of like their projects and stuff. And people forget that PR people aren't crisis managers. That's a specific job.
Yeah.
When it gets to a point of defending your client by way of throwing another star under the bus, that's the stuff that people are going to be too scared to do now.
Yeah.
I think the planting stories and the hiring of whatever social manipulation type things exist, which I'm so intrigued by the way. I'm dying to know more about Jed Wallace.
Yeah.
Like Jed's on it. He's on Reddit. He's going to turn Reddit. What's he doing?
He's gonna turn Reddit.
What? I also kind of don't know what Jed Wallace looks like. Like, is he just like a guy in Texas at his computer? Like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm very fascinated by Jed Wallace.
Yeah, and I mean, that whole email exchange with what they charge. It's like Jen, the publicist, Melissa Nathan, the crisis person, and the social manipulation people. Like, they were firing on all cylinders, and I still maintain that like if the question is, did he do a retaliatory smear campaign? I don't think that's going to come out in his favor.
That Jed, was not a part of it.
I think what often happens, and what I read from this article, is that clients don't know how publicists do what they do.
Interesting.
Well, they don't know how the stories are being planted and how the chess pieces are being moved. So I could maybe it's plausible deniability, honestly.
Well, doesn't at one point, really quick, at one point doesn't Justin text Melissa or the whole team and he says like, hey, tag team, I just want to confirm that these bots are not us.
Yeah.
Like to your point about them not really knowing, like, hey, just want to make sure we're not using bot accounts, fake accounts.
I know. The fact that he even had to ask.
Yeah, no, like they don't know.
But then there is the text of him saying like, we need stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
Where an article and like, X person has bullied
Haley Bieber's a mean girl.
Yes.
I was like, is that a narrative?
Right.
That Haley Bieber's a bully? I don't think that's conventional
I think I disagree. I've heard that Haley and Kendall Jenner are like kind of a part of a meaner. This is kind of older news. I wouldn't say necessarily now it's a part of her image, but at least like 4 or 5 years ago, like they were part of like a mean girl group in Hollywood. I mean, compared to maybe like a Taylor Swift and like
a Gigi on the farm.
Yes,
for sure.
Anyway,
with Yolanda.
Yeah. Yolanda and Zayn living in Pennsylvania.
Well, apparently Taylor and Travis allegedly just bought a farm in that same town.
I love that you're whispering.
Well,
where's that?
I feel like I heard this on someone's
dark
Patreon. That's like a $400 tier or something that I subscribe to.
Are you like
released at 2 a.m.
Are you like a
minutes.
lurker? Do you have an alias? And you? I am absolutely.
I'm going to use my right to remain silent on a few things.
I think you should say the first and last name of your fake Facebook account.
Yeah, I've had
I think it's a good fake.
I've had
Facebook
so many
account. Your Jed Wallace account.
She's Jed.
So I mean, I've had like Lisa Sullivan as a classic.
That is a perfect name that I would never think is a fake name.
Exactly.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to hear the craziest thing I ever did with a Facebook alias?
Always.
Okay, so when I was 19, my boyfriend cheated on me. And anyway, it was this big drama. And I moved away to BYU and I really wanted to get back at him. And this was the like time of Facebook walls when people like write on each other's wall. So I was like, I'm going to, and I was like in a torment, a fervor over this breakup. I was just unwell. I like wake up in a sweat. I was just like, it was
a traumatic, it was like a year-long relationship.
I like lost 10 pounds in 10 days. Like I couldn't eat. Like it was so bad.
It was your all too well. Like it was
my all too well
breakup. Yeah.
And I was so psychotic. And so anyway, I created a fake Facebook profile of a hot guy to then flirt with me on my wall. So it gets worse. So that my boyfriend could see it, my ex-boyfriend could see it, who I still wanted to be my boyfriend, at the time. So anyway, so I proceed to do this and the guy writes on my wall, like flirting with me and I'm flirting back with him. And like, we're talking about like this album that was like actually really important to me and my ex, like psychotic shit. Okay. But then the photo I used was I Googled hot guy. Didn't really think about it.
She's literally Manti Te'o.
Yes. I didn't think about it. This conversation was up on my wall for at least a year. The guy's name, by the way, was not normal sounding. It was Henry Garrett, which is just like
hot guy name, like into Chat GPT.
Sorry, keep going.
So Henry Garrett, if the name wasn't enough of a tip off that this was me on another account, my own catfish moment, I had pulled a photo of Jack Dorsey and this in 2011 when he was very much the public CEO of Twitter. Okay.
Oh, sorry. You didn't know how to catfish well.
Yes. I also didn't know who Jack Dorsey was. And I definitely thought I was like smart and with it in the tech world for sure. Like I knew all about those players. So it is
Henry Garrett, Jack Dorsey.
Henry Garrett as Jack Dorsey.
Henry Garrett's giving Kyle by Elaine too, and I can't explain why. I'm like, which name is it? Henry Garrett.
I know, right? 2 first names, name. Anyway.
How did that net out? Did anyone figure it out? Did you?
Thankfully, no one called me out.
Did Lisa weigh in? And was Lisa Sullivan part of this? So happy that you're happy, Lauren.
Lisa, clearly these two have a lot of chemistry.
At this point, it was just direct back and forth.
No,
it wasn't
it's on the public wall.
It's on my wall, so people can read it, and other people could have commented. I don't think I had enough of like an engaged community at this point for anyone. I just really wanted my ex-boyfriend to see it. So
I think I can speak as a close family friend and loved one at that point who was just holding on for dear life, hoping that she got better soon.
Yeah.
One time I did an episode where I crowdsourced what's like the most embarrassing or cringeworthy thing you did to try to make someone jealous. And it was all stuff like that. And we all have it in us.
Yeah.
I laugh, but truly I have been shameful in my past attempts because like especially when you're heartbroken, like all you do is like dream about showing up to a place looking hotter than you've ever looked and them just cursing the day that they left. And you kind of like, manufacture these situations to set them up for being really sorry they let you go.
Oh, no, well, I mean, I think everyone in this room, this is your podcast, but maybe everyone should share their fantasy running in their head from when they were like 24 with the ex,
What it would have been.
Do you have one on the top of your head? If you don't, we can move on, but it's a fun game.
Well, can I share though? Well, I'll just share this because this is along the same lines. Something I have had to let go of is the fantasies in my head about my ex stalking my Instagram and just feeling so mystified by me. Like, what is she up to? What is she doing? She seems so happy and successful. But now because of the podcast can I curse on this also?
Of course, yeah.
Because of this fucking podcast that I have, there's no mystery left. There's literally no mystery. There are 6 videos at least a week of me of all different angles looking, various states of disheveled. And like, there's just no more mystery left about what I'm interested in, what I'm doing, how am I so hot, how am I so successful. I'm spilling it all like for content to feed the machine. And that dawned on me within the last year. And that took me down because that is my fantasy is just my ex, like seeing how great my life is and being like, I would just love to spend an hour with her again.
Yeah.
You're so right. Even though I think, we're esteemed in our careers, your ex being a podcaster is more of a punchline.
It is.
Like desirable, how do you like me now? When you see my face, hope it gives you hell vibes. It's kind of like cringy.
Thirsty.
Or thirsty. The thing is, people generally shut up when you're successful, like you guys are. But it doesn't pack the same punch as like, hasn't seen you in years. You show up to a reunion, like an absolute smoke show.
Right.
And they just, can't believe it. And I can attest too, like I wrote about some of my exes in my book and you know, Taylor Swift at the end of the All Too Well short film, it's like her reading her book and like, that's her full circle moment. I can attest it. No one cares. Not a one. Haven't heard from anyone.
Nobody's just like pouring over this.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think they're like, let it go. It's been a while.
They have moved on.
Yeah.
They don't want to read your interpretation of it. They think you're psychotic. And that for me was like when she released the 10-minute video and at the end, she's like, the older, 32-year-old redhead, studious novelist who's made her entire identity this like, torrid romance in her early 20s in Brooklyn. It was just embarrassing. It's like, move on, girl.
It's like, girl, we are that, but we don't want to show the
Yes. Yeah. Well, the red hair for me took me out of the moment.
Yes.
I don't know why. I didn't need her to be older Sadie.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it should have just been Sadie.
And this is a problem that we have with Taylor Swift is I think she's just so on the nose.
Yeah.
So often. And we love her. Love her.
I mean, I've heard the song The Man. She's very on the nose.
She's very on the nose and she can't help herself.
She doesn't have like our older sister Courtney has like she has a great taste level. And I feel like she can like guide us. She needs like a Courtney in her life who's like, maybe not with, I don't know, maybe not with the skaters, the 10th skater skirt this week. Maybe not.
Skater skirts. I used to wear them as a kid. I called them spin around skirts. How do you feel about the thigh chain? January 8th, 2020 is the day that will live in infamy. Not only because that's the day Meghan and Harry were like, hey, we don't really want to be royals anymore. It was also the day Beth knocked on my dressing room door at a live show and handed me a bag of full-sized, furry Amika products, and I was beside myself. So excited that I had to go buy a separate bag to check said products in because I'd be damned if I wasn't going to take home every last drop. I knew they were the good stuff because my hairstylist like has and uses them like at the bowl because it's prestige hair care. And ever since I started using their Perk Up dry shampoo, I've not been the same. Their Perk Up dry shampoo is like the best in the biz, in my heart, but also literally the full size is the #1 prestige dry shampoo in the US for a reason. It's talc-free. For the love, please stop using talc-based dry shampoos. It uses rice starch to absorb oils, and it not only absorbs oil, it also reduces odor, has an invisible finish. I use it when I first blow dry my hair and it's clean to prevent oil absorption. but I also use it in between washes to zhuzh it up, and my hair is truly like new. And I can't emphasize enough, like why do hair products smell so crazy and overtake your perfume and natural musk? Like it's insane. This does not have an overpowering scent, which I really appreciate about it too. And it doesn't like leave that crazy white residue. It's just like truly the best dry shampoo out there. Also, what I've been telling you guys about lately is their Superfruit Star hair styling oil. And you guys, I wasn't like a big hair oil user. But when I tell you I now have this both upstairs and downstairs because I use it for heat protection, it protects your hair up to 450 degrees. But also like just adds back shine and sheen and life to my otherwise dry ends that can feel like straw some days in the Chicago winter. I just feel like it's giving me that Lisa Barlow-esque shine, if you know what I mean. If you know, you know. It's non-greasy. It's super light. It just like restores and nourishes your hair, make hair 7 times stronger, 2 times smoother with 86% less breakage. And ever since I lost so much of it postpartum, I'm now like hyper vigilant about wanting to like protect and maintain what I have left of my mane. And what's great about Amika and why I wanted to work with them is they have 11 different collections to ensure there are options for all hair types, textures, and styles. So they're including everybody. And you can figure out what type you are on their website. But also, I can't emphasize this enough. I've had a few incidents ordering from places where you just I never know who the seller is. I am just buying beauty products directly from the manufacturer's URL lately. And I encourage you to do the same with Amika because not only do we have a discount, they're also really environmentally conscious and they're B Corp certified and they're making all the good choices for the earth and for us best because Amika loves Be There in 5 listeners as much as we love them. And they're giving you a one-time use code of 20% off your first order. Just go to loveamika.com/BeThereIn5 and use code BeThereIn5 at checkout. That's loveamika.com/BeThereIn5, code BeThereIn5 to get 20% off your first order. And guys, this is the discount. They're only giving us this for like the first couple of months we're working with them, and this will go down to 15%. So please, for the love, grab your Amika products ASAP and get 20% off. And that way you don't have to wait for the Sephora sale. I am stocking up. Okay, bye. Hope I didn't stress you out there. Read the urgency. But hey, if you're stressed out, we have the Calm app. There's a lot happening these days. It can feel especially stressful or hopeless when things are outside of our control, but Calm can help you restore your sense of balance amidst outside chaos. Listen, I don't know about you guys. I've had a lot of trouble focusing lately. I've had a lot of trouble with my news diet. I've had a lot of trouble just, going down to a low simmer from the rolling boil I typically feel that I'm at day in and day out when I look at my notifications. And Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, giving you the power to calm your mind and change your life for a reason. I not only use it for sleeping, but just kind of midday sometimes, like a grounding exercises when I'm feeling overwhelmed. They have short guided sessions. They use sensation, movement, and breath work to help you relax and reset. I'm being sincere. Like I'm having a little bit of trouble with like emotional regulation lately and like getting back to work and refocusing or switching over, and just focusing on my, kid. And I really like their grounding exercises, but I also live for like a guided meditation. And instead of like scrolling through the millions on YouTube, the Calm app just has like a great curation of people with great voices. Oh, and they also have sleep stories, which are really fun. And by fun, I mean, relaxing to help you drift off to sleep. I just need something to focus on that's not like overly engaging or affects my nervous system that can help me task switch away from whatever I'm mulling over and kind of slowly drift off to sleep. And I don't know what it is that they do there to curate such a selection, but these are incredibly effective ways to just kind of lull yourself away from whatever you're worried about and just get a good night's sleep. And a lot of you tell me you fall asleep listening to me, which is interesting. I don't know that I provide the most low stress content out there. Might I suggest Calm? I think will help you have a better night's sleep, probably less nightmares. And if you want to stress less, sleep more, and live better with Calm, for listeners of our show, Calm is offering an exclusive offer of 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/BeThereIn5. Go to calm.com/BeThereIn5 for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. That's calm.com/BeThereIn5.
I thought it was hot and cute and fun, and I actually liked that dress better than a lot of stuff she's worn.
It looked great. I loved it. I feel like there's a butt coming with you.
Well, Courtney said it was giving period blood.
I disagree.
Sorry, Kate.
No, it was to me, it was like, I thought it was going to be one of those things where she'd turn it around someday and be like, everyone thought it was for Travis, but why wouldn't they think it was for Taylor type thing?
Yeah.
But it was for Travis because she wore the thigh chain to the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
I think she was spotted wearing it as a necklace.
Yeah.
I thought it was an on the nose nod to Guilty as Sin.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Which I thought was hot. I was into it. I mean, she's made far worse decisions. So I have to I have to try to give her the breaks when I when
I'm still wondering when we're going to find out what the plaid was about. I think she just wears a lot of plaid.
I kind of wonder if she's a little bit like Meghan, Markle in the way that she will, like in her brain, maybe she's like has a whole concept for what she's about to launch and she's soft launching something that she ends up pivoting on. And she's actually not like Meghan Markle at all because she obviously clearly executes brilliantly and is like a tycoon. But I just feel like maybe there are some nascent ideas that never just come to fruition.
Like in terms of fashion?
Yeah, like maybe she had an idea for like a 5-song album she was going to release called Plaid. Okay, that hit the cutting room floor, and we're just never going to know about
This is a generous approach to bath style.
I feel, well, yeah, or like bleach yellow. I feel like there are kind of phases, well, or it's like the clear style shift that isn't associated with an era, but with a transition. Where when she started wearing hot pants and like page boy, the Hyannisport era.
Yeah.
But anyway, how do you feel about her wearing a lot of label forward stuff? Do you think it's Travis's influence?
I feel like it's paid.
You think?
She
doesn't need
Like the
that,
Louis
though.
Vuitton look at the Super Bowl.
But
The
this
Louis
is
Vuitton sweatshirt bummed me out.
It was like
so fugly.
it was so fugly. It was a new level of fugly.
Yeah, but it was something Travis would wear.
Yes, I mean in his style, sometimes he looks good.
Yeah.
Sometimes his Super Bowl look equally as horrendous.
You're
Yeah.
right. It is the Travis influence. We can blame it on the man.
But that's just like giving so like nouveau riche to me. Like I don't know.
Well,
It's
the
like
shoe
gives me
fits.
the ick.
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting to refresh the style situation personally.
I think she a little bit suffers from a specific disease where she like wants to always have her most flattering like silhouette on.
Mm.
And I think that just can tend to like I come across as kind of dated, and I think she needs to give more silhouettes a try. Like she needs to go for more of oversized looks. She needs to not always be like emphasizing her waist, and she's very tip forward these days, which all the power to her. But it just doesn't always like slap for the fashion girl.
I think that would be the ultimate goal, but I just think she could just wear less. Like not like in terms of being more like scantily clad, but I just think she overdoes it with the entire look and then the accessories. And she's so beautiful. And I just think maybe more neutrals, less plaid to her earlier point.
I feel like her what always looks so good on her and comes across as so effortless and beautiful is whenever she's in Dylan. I just feel like it just seems like her. It's sweet.
Fans here. I'm going to send you guys a link that I just want to get your thoughts about because I think this is such a gift and it reminds me of something I heard you guys talk about on the podcast. So in 2000, I believe it was 2008, an 18-year-old Taylor Swift exported the data on her iPod to USA Today to write an article, and they released all of her most played tracks
Wait, what?
in 2008.
Oh my gosh.
And somebody made a playlist of it, and I just sent it to you. And everything made sense to me when the third most played song in 2008 for her was the one and only Blower's Daughter. The official song of somebody who is not doing well.
I am so glad you brought this up because Damien Rice was one of my deep obsessions as a teenager. And it 100% tracks with Taylor's personality and her romantic fixations. The themes could not be more on theme.
This is incredible. I've never seen this
Isn't
before.
this kind of a gift?
It is.
Really, I think so much of our attachment to Taylor Swift is like her putting words to the experiences of girlhood and universal shared experiences and whatever. And going through this list, I'm like, yeah, we all did have the same.
Totally.
Tori Amos.
I'm seeing, I mean, and from the Tori Amos to the Colby Calais of it all.
Ingrid Michaelson. But then I like the balance because she'll have like a cool girl, deeper emo cut or like folksy. She'll have like a Coheed and Cambria, but then she'll have like
and Anna Nalick, Breathe 2 a.m. She was watching Grey's Anatomy.
Breathe 2 a.m. is so important to our culture. I feel like that is the song that invented main character in. Like
yes.
on public transit or a bus or in a car, just staring out the window to 2 a.m. It's like.
No, we all were the main character of the movie of our life.
That's a
that's
17. Peak experience.
Yeah.
It really was. Where's Anna Nalick?
I don't know.
Where did she go?
What a star.
Okay, I'm gonna depart, but
yes.
I'm just gonna exit.
Are you gonna listen to as you go? Going to listen to this playlist?
Like I'm already like, thank God this exists because I need to send this to 18 friends and I need to go listen to it.
I also love how you can see nods to things that she talks about. Like this very second song is by The Starting Line.
I mean, that's crazy.
In 2008, that's she was.
Because remember how she says in that song, like, I hadn't heard it in a while, like making it clear that was not new to her.
Yeah.
And this corroborates that story.
And there's a song by, I think, is it Patty Griffin called Peter that's on here?
Oh my God.
Peter Pan, Patty Griffin.
Wow. This is a gift.
It really is. Because mine in 2008, I think I had a lot more like Pussycat Dolls on mine, but I just thought you guys would appreciate this as lovers of pop culture music.
Jeff Buckley.
I mean, Daisy, so important.
Oh, I mean, this album, I think, is like the soundtrack to being a millennial woman. Honestly, what could be more fitting?
Because I think that because we dabbled in like music pirating and burned CDs and like, you know, we're early to iPods and stuff, I actually think we have more like diverse music taste than we're getting credit for, more dynamic music taste than we get credit for. Like, I didn't just listen to Radio Top 40 because like we illegally downloaded all this music.
Right. Well, I think like part of, and I think maybe they've kind of gotten away from this, the young people. I'm not sure. But I feel like in our generation, it was really uncool to like the most popular music.
1,000%.
And now I think people are a little bit more loose. Like, I think people are fine to like what's number one and fine to have their playlist. But in my time, it was like you wouldn't be caught dead listening to anything on Top 40.
Oh, there was so much performance to the type of, if somebody like when I was a teenager or early in my 20s, like a guy was like, what type of music are you into?
That's the biggest loaded question.
I'd be like, I don't know, 311. Like, I completely lie.
You would need to come up with something they had never heard of before, a very small band that had maybe 10 fans.
Yes.
Or else that would be social suicide.
You didn't want to be mainstream.
Mm-hmm, no.
And I think that I'm never going to get over that Facebook story. When I did the episode about people making people jealous, somebody submitted that in elementary or middle school, she had a crush on this guy that wouldn't pay attention to her at all. So her and her friends faked her death by having her fake drown in a pond.
Stop.
Like, it's like, wait, hearing these stories, I'm like, we just want a little bit of reassurance.
Well, because I never had the fake death.
I mean, you can't follow through with that. You're not going to get with the guy if you're dead.
No. There's really a commitment there to the bit for sure. So I'm so impressed she thought of that. But I mean, we all had the fantasy of like, I'm dying, so I can call you because I'm dying. At least now we can like hook up, or not hook up, but like now we'll have like a moment of catharsis because at least I'm about to be dead. So we can just be honest that we're in love.
That is why the most important and honest Taylor Swift lyric I've ever heard in my life is, I think about jumping off of very tall somethings just to see you come running.
I mean, you're a scholar, a Swiftie scholar, but it's so true. That is the psychosis.
Yeah. It's embarrassing to admit, but I like that kind of transparency in songwriting. Like, it's not, you said your dad uses the word becoming. It's not a becoming thing to admit that you have fucked up fantasies about how to get somebody's attention.
No, and it's very it's very uncool. It's showing all your cards. And I feel like, I mean, this is so sacrilegious. I won't actually say it. I like joked with double.
You can say it.
I can say it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like I always joke with my friends. I'm in a group chat called the Swiftie Scissor Sisters, and because we're just like obsessed with Taylor Swift. And anyway, I always say like she gave her life, like Jesus Christ, like she like literally like has given like her identity and like kind of thrown herself. Like she has laid it all out there, and to her own detriment, where people think she's crazy and people think she's so embarrassing and so cringe and so over the top and obsessed. And it's like, yes, because guess what? Red-blooded heterosexual women, that's what we are. We're psychotic, okay? If you know what it's like to be in the thrust of like a love affair, like that's what she's describing. And it's so highly relatable, which is why I think her fans are so passionate, because like when we are at the Eras Tour, we're having an out-of-body experience, like being brought back into our bodies, listening to Breathe 2 a.m.
right
at 14.
Nailed to the cross like Jesus, a la Vicky Gunvalson.
Exactly.
She really has, it's kind of a sacrificial lamb of like putting, your entire life, your diary pages, everything you are out there, so other people can feel understood, only for you to be misrepresented and misunderstood.
And to have all your ex-boyfriends kind of like you cannot play it cool anymore. Like,
right.
You think your dignity is gone.
Precisely. And I think the maddening part about fame, I can kind of hear this in like the Red era and stuff, is when you're famous, the kind of moving goalpost of what cool is changes. So her in 2010 is the coolest, most interesting person anybody from Hendersonville, Tennessee knew. And her success was like, obviously, a how do you like me now situation. You date John Mayer, you date Jake Gyllenhaal. They're a higher tier celebrity than you. So you actually don't really have that power post breakup. You feel slighted. You feel like the smaller one. And it was kind of, I think a lot of her songwriting from that era, like, comes from an interesting place of insecurity that's compounded by
being more mainstream. Like, she's so insecure with John Mayer. She's so insecure, you know, when she says like, you have records that are much cooler than mine. And she says, and that insecurity, it's a through line to Tortured Poets. When she's saying, were you making fun of me with some esoteric joke about Joe Allen? It's like, she, in her brain, even though she is like the most famous person in the world, multi-billionaire at this point, she's still too big to hang out. She's kind of cringe. She's not the indie actor who's like esteemed within his art community. I mean, I think that's why, like, didn't Jack Antonoff write in the in his version of Antihero, like, everyone is an art bro lately. You're making fun of your famous baby or something like that. You know, in the corner making fun of your famous baby. Like, there's very much a narrative of her feeling belittled by the men in her life. And I think that a lot of them have made her feel very small. Have they figured out a way to make her feel small, even when she was like always the biggest and best thing in the room?
I mean, Miss Americana told me everything I needed to, and she was like kind of having to cower and over-explain herself.
Well, hey, can I just tell you, in Miss Americana, when she is like, it was like watching the patriarchy in full display.
Exactly.
When she was like basically begging her employees, which were her, like, I don't know who that one guy is who's older.
I know.
Who is that guy?
He's a manager, I think.
He's always around.
He's a manager, yeah.
And then him and Scott are always there. And like, and in that scene, she's like begging them to be able to be vocal about her political opinions when she's 26 and ostensibly their employer. It's so strange.
That's why I think a lot of the Rage and Tortured Poets that, like, especially, you know, like, I think But Daddy, I Love Him is more directed towards, you know, sanctimonious fans, like writing an open letter to get her to stop dating Maddie Healy. But Who's Afraid of Little Old Me, I think, is a direct shot at that tiny circle of people that supports her, and how you can be the biggest pop star in the world, but the bigger you are, the smaller your world has to get and the tighter your circle gets. And the people that are responsible for her persona, that are, you know, a big part of her like career and estate. I think that a lot of her angst sometimes comes from like things she wants to say to them, but makes it look more generalized.
Interesting.
Are you ever on your podcast, you want to talk about something, but you don't want to throw somebody you know under the bus. So you kind of elevate it to be a more generalized conversation because you can't target it.
Yeah, of course. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, for someone in her position, I think she's just in such a tricky place because she's famous for still having the same stylist, the same everything that she did when she first started. She keeps all of her people super close to her. Because I think like once you're in a position where all of a sudden, like all your relationships are transactional and all of the people in your life want something from you, I think it can be very easy to like feel extremely isolated. And I feel like she probably does feel like, well, at least with these people, they are with me at the beginning, so I can trust that they like weren't just mercenaries. And they have that power over me because like I don't want to just get rid of all these people because then I'm literally just going to be surrounded by vultures. And so she like has to like appease them on some level.
That's such a good point. I just always am coming back to, you know, made a rebel of a careless man's careful daughter.
Made a rebel of a careless
man's careful daughter.
Who did she say made?
In mine. And I'm like, is she talking about her? Like, was that before we were overthinking lyrics to be more like autobiographical? I mean,
she's not that rebellious, obviously.
Yeah.
I would like to know the tea on Scott Swift.
I think like you can have tense relationships and phases with people and protect them publicly. And I think she has had a very up and down relationship with her dad.
Yeah.
But
what was the other thing she said about Scott? There was something about, honestly, there's remarkably little about her parents' relationship and like divorce.
Nothing.
And
a lot of people don't even realize they're divorced because they're always around.
I mean, we need to hear either their interview on Conscious Uncoupling, because they clearly did an impeccable job. You would think there'd be one song. Isn't that flooring?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she really goes out of her way to protect her family.
But I think that's a way her and Travis really connect. Like, if you look at what his parents did, they stayed together in the same house, even though they kind of hated each other, because they basically couldn't afford to like have two boys in football and like not have an organized one household.
Mm-hmm.
It was just more efficient. And if you look at really the way like Scott and Andrea were so focused on Taylor's career and, you know, saw it really as a business and really invested in her and also had this fractured relationship, I'm curious about those conversations.
I am too. I used to get annoyed. I think when Taylor and Travis first started dating, and people were like Endgame, like kind of doing the jet of Pookie and the Jets style, like kind of unrealistic, swept away romance. And I'm like, can a gal date? Like, do we have to sign like engagement and marriage to her like immediately all the time? But now, I mean, over a year in, I am kind of wondering, like, are they endgame?
Or like a year and how many months? Like a year and 4 months?
Yeah, maybe.
Heather McDonald. Are you juicy?
Yeah, she was on my show several years ago.
Cool.
Yeah.
Fun. I love Heather McDonald, and what she says is like she thinks it's such a bad sign. She just thinks like, and this is kind of
What's
an antiquated look at this, just that like they're not engaged. Like,
oh my God, I could rage about that POV.
I know it is a ragey POV for sure. It is, but I think there might be like some truth to it. I do think you move quicker in your 30s.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that like you do, and I think if they are not engaged by the 2-year mark, that's just like that is something to.
Do we know that she wants to be engaged?
I mean, I know it's like overlaying a lot of patriarchal values on this woman, but she definitely said when she was younger she wanted to have kids and have a family.
Yeah.
So
I can't imagine that prenup will be just so ironclad.
Well, also like she says in her song, like you talk me under the table, like talking rings and talking cradles. She definitely talks
give
about
my
like
wow, give you a child.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this is a Taylor Swift podcast. Once somebody gets me going talking about Taylor Swift, I'm never going to stop. Okay, we don't have that much longer, but the one thing I did want to know, just from your perspective, last year, I think I came across your podcast during like the Kate Middleton of it all.
Yes.
So you guys kind of blew up during that time, right? And like, didn't you have like a source or something or a way that you knew stuff and like started making a lot of content about it? Like, how did that kind of come about?
This episode is also brought to you by Ritual. I don't know about you guys, but it seems like everybody on the internet's like a glazed donut of a dewdrop when it comes to their skin. I can't retain moisture to save my life, especially in this Chicago winter. And Ritual has this supplement called Hyacera, which I use as a supplement to my skincare routine because no matter what 12-step, situation I employ, I still can feel like I'm missing something and not retaining moisture the way I want to be. Ritual's Hyacera skin supplement is a clinically proven way to support skin hydration with science-backed benefits like reducing wrinkles and improving skin smoothness. Heard about it a few years ago because I worked with Ritual for a while, love their prenatal vitamin, love their women's multi. And I thought this was an interesting concept. Like instead of adding another topical thing to your regimen that you won't know if it's really working for a long time, if at all. Hyacera is a once daily skin supplement clinically proven to reduce fine lines and increase skin smoothness in 90 days. And in a clinical study, Hyacera led to a 2.9x increase in skin smoothness within 90 days as compared to placebo. And subjects reported an improvement in skin elasticity, glow, and radiance in 90 days, which I think is kind of incredible because that can be hard to quantify, but like the vibes are there. That's not science, but when I like look at my skin when I take Hyacera, I see a visible improvement in ways that I wouldn't know how to describe, but like elasticity, glow, and radiance does the job. It really enhances your skincare routine from the inside out with one daily capsule, essence with soothing vanilla. Ritual also works with world-class certification bodies to validate their products, and in this category that's not regulated, they don't have to do that, but they do anyway. It's a female-founded company. There's a really interesting story and about wanting transparency in a supplement supply chain. And they have transparent bottles and capsules, and you can find out where all their ingredients are from. And start Hyacera to support your glow without compromising on clean science. Hyacera from Ritual is a clinically proven skin supplement you can actually trust. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/BeThereIn5. That's ritual.com/BeThereIn5 for 25% off your first month. This episode is also brought to you by Rocket Money. I just received a text from Kelly Kennedy, another person who's not always great with their subscriptions. being like, wait, should I really use Rocket Money? And guys, I'm not lying here in my ads, of course. If you're anything like me and you get a little too click happy with a free trial, you forget after 7 days to cancel it, or you end up starting a new account for a streaming service because there's a new show that you have to watch and you don't want to see spoilers. I mean, tales as old as time. I am embarrassed how many times I've done this. And Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money allows you to see all your subscriptions in one place and know exactly where your money is going. It helped me sort through ones I use, I don't use, don't want anymore, figure out duplicates. I also like that it sends me an email when there's a large transaction. You can also create a personalized budget with custom categories, help your spending be on track, get alerts if bills increase in price. Okay, I can't even believe also all these streaming services, how much and how often the bills increase in price. It's highway robbery. And I feel like it's watching over me to keep tabs on my spending, but also unusual spending activity. And they even will try to negotiate lower bills for you. They can scan your bills to find opportunities to save, and you can ask them to negotiate for you. And Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/BeThereIn5 today. That's rocketmoney.com/BeThereIn5. rocketmoney.com/BeThereIn5.
Yeah. So the way it came about was I started making the reels because I literally I just had heard, like, when a hot topic is coming up, like you make reels about it because those get pushed to new people, make TikToks. And I remember thinking like, oh, my older sister is kind of interested in this Kate Middleton thing. So it's reaching like beyond the pop culture, celebrity obsessed people. It's reaching to like, maybe she's a little celebrity obsessed, but it's just kind of like reaching very rational people who are not that conspiratorial. And so when I realized that a lot of people were keen on it and focused on it, I started like making reels because I was like, okay, well, this is what they say to do. I got to go to work right now. I got to do it. So that's how it started. And I made 9 in one day. And by the end of the day, it was like picking up, picking up to a degree, right? And so then anyway, it ended up fully going viral when we did like 33 parts. But
dang.
Yeah, once we were in it, once we were like,
were they cuts of your podcast or you made specific reels?
No, they were just reels.
I see.
They were specific reels. They were not of the podcast. And so once I was at like part 14, my friend, she said, I have a friend who's in London. And by the way, I just want to say disclaimer. I can completely understand if someone saw what we were doing and thought they're making all this up to like get some like for a viral moment. I can understand like not liking us because that would have been atrocious if we were just like making up all this stuff. And that's just not what happened at all. So I have this friend and she said, I have a friend in London. She's connected to both palaces. She has big people talking to her in both palaces. And
like
so
directly?
Directly. And so this friend was like, yeah, I have friends in Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace or a friend in each, excuse me. And she said, I'm going to tell you like what each of them are telling me independent of each other. And they don't know that they're telling me this independent of each other. And I'm not going to tell you anything else. The story she told me, and this is a person like this is not a complete random. The story she told me was very, very dark, very awful. But I had every reason to believe that it was true. And we kind of thought it was a Free Britney situation where we were like shining a light on what was happening to Kate. And I like was afraid for my life because I thought the palace was like going to try to kill me.
Ask you that? Like, yeah, I might get a little spooked.
I was like really scared in the subway station. It was eerie to go through the tunnel, like going from Brooklyn to New York. Like it was
because someone from their camp saw some of that material.
100%. And so and I thought we were exposing the truth. And so what's funny is, it's not that funny, but I had a moment where I was like, what if she's like actually sick and like has cancer or something? And I remember my stomach like getting a knot. Like, oh my God, that would be the most horrible outcome of all of this kind of personally and for her. Cause it's like, wow, we would look like awful people. And it's like, she's ill. And so now we've like said all these things about a woman who's cancer stricken or sick, and that's like literally exactly what ended up happening. I mean,
what did you guys like? I remember where I was because I did an episode about it, kind of joking, and I mean, and the public shaming from people if you talked about it in a lighthearted manner once we found out it was cancer was kind of intense.
Oh well, it was the same people who were like hounding us for part 37, who were like, why haven't you posted one today? Were all of a sudden flagellating us for having given them what they wanted, having like having kind of like made and entertaining series out of all the conspiracy theories.
Yeah. And to you, they weren't conspiracy theories. They were, you had a source.
What we did was we kind of shared what everyone thought. So like we had a reel about how like some people say she's in Antarctica right now with a bunch of elites who have like fled because they're about to be exposed. And
not heard that one.
Mitch McConnell's also like hasn't been seen in a while, and her and Mitch McConnell are in Antarctica.
What?
So we kind of said like every wild thing that could be possible. But then we had parts 24 through 27, which were our thesis on what actually was going on.
Okay.
So we had like what we were told by the source, and then we kind of like. We would kind of we kept the series going with like minor updates as things would proceed. So it became like we'd get less prolific over time because there was honestly just like less to report on.
Okay.
And then, yeah, of course, like when the video came out, it was just like, we actually did hire a crisis PR person because it was a crisis and it was really scary. And yeah, we got like all these psycho emails from people being like, had some stalking happening just digitally. So it was wild.
How long? I'm always curious when people are at the center of like an intense moment of like scrutiny or feedback, but it's all digital. Like it's almost this confusing juxtaposition of like your immediate life and everything you're doing is the exact same, and all the hate is like in this place, and you can like choose not to look at it, but it very much exists. Like how long does that last?
That's a good question. I mean, it was definitely like not a fun weekend. I mean, I think the reality is like Chandler is extremely cautious as a co-host, and she's a little nervous, and honestly probably would have never happened if she hadn't been on a Bachelorette, and because I was left to my own devices that weekend, and I kind of like went wild, hog wild. She would have been like, simmer down, slow down, we can't say all this stuff. But anyway, she had a friend reach out and be like, and was like, I have a friend also who corroborates all of this and is like fully in the know. And we also had an A-lister in our DMs saying that William is like nothing like what he appears, and then the A-lister like messaged us the next day and was like, please delete all of this. Like, so it was crazy. Dang. It was crazy. So anyway, long story short though, to answer your question, I just knew that we always had proper intentions. So I just was never that hard on myself. You know, I was super sad she had cancer for her and her family. But I wasn't going to like self-flagellate for no reason. And I'm not going to use that word anymore. I've used it enough on this podcast.
I feel like I'm definitely more of a Chandler in that like I'm so cautious and nervous all the time. And it is kind of confusing when all people want from you is like tea and scoop. But when that's like completely turned on you, if it turns out to be something different, and I never know how to strike that balance. But like there is plenty of chatter, evidence, and like kind of buried stories over the years about William that like lead in a pretty specific direction. And I think that part of what Harry and Meghan haven't said has to do a lot with that, and why they don't feel more inclined to heed to them and their needs. They don't really respect a lot of the things going on there.
I mean, Harry said in his book that William was physically violent with him. Okay, that's on the record, and then it's also on the record that he apparently has enough material for an entire other book that's like darker material. So I really think Harry and Meghan have a lot of leverage in the situation because they know who William really is. And I think they obviously have probably a lot more receipts. They probably have an entire website that they could put up Brian Friedman style if they wanted. And so that's potentially what keeps them going too, is they don't feel like they're in any way in the wrong. I mean, listen, like Kate Middleton and, you know, what she's going through, aside from that, she was not the most like welcoming sister-in-law. She was not I think, from Meghan's recount, we only have Meghan's side of the story, but like, I don't know. I'd be pretty annoyed if I was going into a family and I had to curtsy in private and I couldn't just make a roast dinner in jeans and give someone a hug.
Bare feet. You know, what's interesting is a lot of that conversation is similar to Blake and Justin in terms of like comfort level, boundaries, professionalism, in that like I absolutely would go in for a hug, even if you're, you know, queen consulate or whatever, like behind closed doors, like who cares? I think a lot of that is so insane and pretentious, but also like, one of the things Harry said is that Kate was like, thought it was insane, like so off put that Meghan asked to use her
lip gloss.
And I'm like, that's girlhood.
Well, and that's the pick me girl. That's like, ew, so yucky, like germs. You know, it's the girl who's like always has like the subtle flex on how clean she is, and like, you know, it's just the girl who's cold.
Well, what's funny is I was like, that's an insane behavior to like use that as a reason you don't like somebody. That's just, you know, women supporting women. And I was like bombarded with DMs of people being like, ew, never share your lip gloss.
Yes.
That is disgusting. And I forget there's like germophobe people out there judging me for every move I make that I'm not overthinking, and it makes me nervous.
Well, the people online honestly are everyone except the people who are listening.
Love you.
It's a little tricky. I'm sure you feel this way, to have a podcast you do every week and to not feel like I'm going to say something that's going to annoy someone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have the moment where I do something where someone's like, ew, I would never, or whatever. And I think that's a little bit of just like a characteristic of a lot of people online, is they're just very ungenerous. Like, you say one thing they don't like, and even doesn't matter if they listened to you for 5 years. It's like, I'm done with you, you know?
No, it's so stressful. It's needing people to match your opinions on every level. Yeah, I'm with you in that it's very challenging to speak freely and be creative, because over time that wears on you and kind of builds a filter into the way you speak that affects your work, trying to factor in everyone ever, caveat everything ever. And yeah, it is, uncreative is the best way I can describe it. It makes it hard to focus because people make you feel like you need to be exhaustive.
And you need to have every disclaimer in the world.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're saying. And so I think one of my goals, honestly, is to just be like fine with being criticized, like, and just be myself. And even if I have some cringe ideas like Pookie and Jet, or just, you know, the hallmark of a great, or the emblems of great romance, run with it. Cause it's just like, it's so boring to always have a safe opinion.
Exactly. I think it really sanitizes a lot of conversations. I feel like it's not even fair to my audience, because I'm doing that out of self-preservation for all the feedback I don't want to feel overwhelmed by, and therefore giving you guys like a worse experience for the handful of people that are just louder than the others.
Exactly. And the people who, because most people are like, I think, really benevolent listeners or generous listeners. I think those are the people that like we're in service of, as those supporters who do hear something you say that's off-putting, but they know that you're a good person and they roll past it and they support you.
Yeah.
And they support the show. That really is the majority, but they're just kind of a silent majority. And I try to think about that. Like, those are the people that this is for.
Do you think there's a silent majority of Meghan Markle supporters?
I mean, it's really sad. I mean, you have Meghan Markle content, so you'll see the vitriol that'll come out. If you say anything about her, it's just like the DMs are just atrocious about her. So she has some very vocal supporters, some fan pages. But I think for the most part, she's like pretty heavily disliked. Think about the way we're just like, I mean, we have experienced some backlash and we're like, so, you know, it's made us feel a certain way. I just can't imagine how she operates.
I would disappear off the internet. I think that she's in a situation where like she can't win.
She cannot win.
That to me is like such a maddening place to be. And that's why, per our talk on your podcast, my highest hopes for, and what is it, with Love Meghan, is that she's just like caring a little less.
Yeah.
But the problem is the previews for that show is caring and curating the most.
The most curated. But it kind of makes sense. It makes sense why it's also picture perfect. Because listen, like, we don't deserve it at this point. We don't deserve the vulnerability. Like, we don't.
You're so right. We don't.
Yeah.
Do you ever sign off letters, emails, texts with as ever?
No, but I'm not like my mom says my handwriting looks like I've had a stroke. Like, I don't have the like perfect loop-de-loo cursive handwriting, and I'm just not that kind of girly. Like, I don't do the XOs really. Like, I'm just not. Yeah. It's not like that.
I was not familiar with it as a salutation. Like, I had never seen somebody's, like, because she signs off her Instagrams like as ever.
She
Meghan.
always does now.
Yeah. And it's very old timey, but as is written correspondence. Like, it sounds like she sends a lot of letters. It sounds like she writes a lot. And it is kind of funny thinking of a business name in that context as being like, what if you called your business Best Regards? Like,
Best Regards.
Like, it's just kind of an interesting phrase to pick that, I'm dying to see if it's like a goop-tastic situation that's high end and out of like maybe a little bit out of touch, but there's an audience for it and it does well, or if it's like Blake Lively's Preserve.
I know, and unfortunately, with a lot of Meghan's projects, they tend to fall into the way of the preserve of it all, without really good execution. But I'm hoping for Goop. I want to see Meghan as the CEO of a huge company. I want to see her, if that's what she wants, like really killing it. And I want to see the aspirational lifestyle content. I want the Q&A from the infrared sauna, girl. Like, let's do this.
Yes, I want question boxes and Instagram stories.
Oh my gosh, it's coming. I think it's coming.
I want swipe up for a link to this top, or like, can you imagine if she did affiliate income? She would.
I think she would.
Crush it. Why the hell not?
Why wouldn't she? I mean, they have security to pay for. That house in Montecito.
Literally. I think that if they didn't have security to pay for and that house to pay for, I don't really think I would F with the public. Like, I don't think they'd have public facing careers if they didn't have to pay for stuff.
My favorite is when people talk about Harry and how like he has an air about him that like he kind of is like unbothered by it all. Like, why am I here? And like, they're just like, it's just so funny, his attitude. And like, it's just like, he is so clearly royal. Like working does not come easily to him, it seems like, or just working in any sort of like capacity to make money.
Right.
Not to say he hasn't done great charity work or worked for the service. But with Meghan, I don't think she's ever going to live an offline life. I think she was always meant for public display. I mean, and she enjoys public display. If anyone follows me on Instagram, they know I can relate. So it's not a dig, but I just think that is who she is. So I don't think she was ever gonna.
Yeah.
I don't think she ever didn't want a big, huge life and a big, huge mansion. But I also think she always wanted a big, huge Instagram account too.
Such a good point. And to her having her social media and her blog taken from her as a part of her identity. Can you imagine like that amount of work we've put into like our audiences and everything we are, and having it taken from us just to marry someone? That would be a deal breaker for me.
To marry someone. And then did you see Not Caught, where they lived for Nottingham Cottage?
Not Caught is not it.
I mean, Not Caught is so tiny. Like Oprah said, they never believe it when she went there, because it was so incredibly dismal. And then also, you're just in the cold weather. I went to the Cotswolds in August last year, and I was just like, I don't think I'll ever be back. Like, it is just cold. It's a cold place.
She's like grew up in LA.
Yeah. No offense to everyone who lives there.
I have a huge British following. No, I don't. My theory has always been like, if a true commoner, anybody that grew up in England or with an understanding or like a built-in reverence for this like aristocratic lifestyle, would have probably delighted in all of the things that come along with Harry. Not only was Meghan American, she also got exposure to the type of fame that is fun and not the type of fame that is public service and on the taxpayer's dollar.
Right.
So I think she thought it was like royal was the thing above celebrity, but actually being a celebrity is way more fun than being a royal. Being a royal is actually the opposite. It's all about restriction.
I mean, who wants to hang out with a dignitary? Not me. No.
Like you said, curtsying in private is
atrocious.
It's disgusting. Yeah.
It really is. And I think that it just also is not her personality.
No.
Like, just like it said, we talked about this on our episode a little bit, like the quote from the Spotify executive, which in Vanity Fair, was that she's very warm and effusive at first. I think that is the true her. I think she's kind of dramatic internally, and maybe some of her worst emotions get the best of her. That's my take. But I feel like she is a warm person. And I feel like to be met with a cold climate and cold in-laws and no notifications, how would you do, listener?
Oh, the way I would simply pass away. And then hope my ex read about it.
Completely.
Oh my gosh, Lauren, it was so much fun talking with you, talking with Chandler too, who, I don't know if I explicitly said this, but we weren't ignoring her. She had to leave earlier. But I love your content, and I'm so excited to keep following along. Where can people find you?
Thank you so much. So we're at Pop Apologists, wherever you listen to podcasts, Instagram, Pop Apologists. Thank you so much for having us. It was so fun. And honestly, we just need to do this again. We have so much to chat about, clearly.
We really do. Yeah. I mean, we got through maybe max three topics.
And I feel like we had more to say.
Yeah, absolutely. You're the best. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Just a reminder, if you want to watch it, it's on YouTube, or it should be very soon. I'm a bit inconsistent because some weeks, depending on like where I am and what I'm doing, where I'm recording, it's easier to do video or not. Then my intro and outro are often not on video because I'm out of town right now, but whatever. Sorry for the inconsistency, but when I can, I try to put it there. We're at a studio in New York, and again, I wish I lived somewhere where I had better access to this stuff. What a dream. I mean, I could do it in Chicago, but again, I'd be talking to myself. What are you going to do? Go to Patreon for my Wicked recap, for my recent personal motherhood update, rate and review 5 stars, share with a friend. It's so helpful when you guys share on stories and stuff. Like, it makes a huge difference. If you could leave a review too, like, that would make my life. I see them and they keep me going, and I love you for it. And otherwise, have a great weekend. As always, let me know your thoughts and I'll let you know mine. I'll be there in 5. I swear.